Coming up on Julie and Friends, is someone close to you dealing with the stigma associated with mental illness? Nationally known social justice and mental health advocate Corey Minor-Smith joins us to share some strategies for you to help those you love.
And so talking about some of the obstacles I faced in my life would show my tenacity and ability to push forward even though college may be hard. So that's where I get that phrase, undesirable circumstances.
Don't go anywhere. Julie and Friends starts right now.
You're going to want to stay tuned for this show. Her guest is kind of a big deal. I'm surprised she's still here because it's kind of been crazy here today a little bit. But she is the author of a book called Hashtag Driven, Corey Minor-Smith. Thank you for being here. She's an author, speaker, blogger, podcaster, radio, TV. She's an attorney. She's a mental health advocate. She's a mom. She's gorgeous. She's a sweetheart. You can tell already. And thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So you're successful, but it came out of pain.
A lot of obstacles.
A lot of obstacles. You
a lot of obstacles. Yes.
Undesirable conditions.
Yes. Undesirable circumstances.
Circumstances.
Yes.
Right.
And that's from a teacher at my high school. She used to use study halls to help students to apply for colleges and scholarships, and I took advantage of that opportunity, and she knew more about my life than I knew at that time. And she told me what she called undesirable circumstances, that I had those in my life. And she encouraged me to write about them because college commissions, they want to see that a student is willing and able to get through difficulty because college is hard, right? And so talking about some of the obstacles I faced in my life would show my tenacity and ability to push forward even though college may be hard. So that's where I get that phrase, undesirable circumstances.
Wow. No, I forgot to mention, you're the first African-American who was on the city council in Canton, Ohio.
The first African-American to be elected citywide, and that was in my position as a council member at large, so representing the whole city of Canton.
When other people had name recognition and you didn't, and so it's amazing.
Thank you very much.
That's very impressive.
Yes.
But,
there were 8 of us in the primary and 6 in the general election, and I came in #1 in both elections.
I love that.
Wow.
Smart people down there in Canton, right?
But obviously there was a call of God on your life, and so sometimes it's more than just our abilities and our backgrounds and where we're at, but God just sovereignly is just placing you in a position to be used for His glory. And so this book is phenomenal. I've been kind of glancing through it, just had a couple minutes to do that. Hashtag Driven, what does that mean to you?
Really, it just sums up me as a person and my being. A lot of people who know me say, you're everywhere, you're doing everything. And I took a time to just think about that. Like, why am I doing all of this stuff? And I used to have this long phrase that was an adaptation from my initial CMS, continuously motivated to succeed. And I boiled it down to driven because through all of the different issues, undesirable circumstances that I faced in my life, I still keep moving forward to reach whatever goal I set for myself. And so ultimately, Hashtag Driven came from an article that I wrote about Shannon Sharp and hearing him at the Pro Football Hall of Fame induction ceremony. I had never been to one of those before. I went with my sons, and listening to his speech just brought tears to my eyes because he talked about having a 5-alarm fire that he felt. And it drove him to be the best football player that he could be. But the reason why, it's always that why that you understand and know why a person is driven to do whatever it is. And for him, he didn't want to return to his hometown where he lived in a shack that leaked every time it rained and ate cold possum and squirrel and oatmeal. He didn't want that anymore. And so he was trying to be the best football player he could be to have a better life, not only for himself, but for his children.
Wow. You know, your book opens when you're 4. And you start to describe in the book for us those undesirable circumstances
Yes.
that have brought you to where you are today. Can you tell us just a little bit about that?
Yes. Ultimately, I went to 14 different schools. When I moved to Canton, that was the first time I had been at one school for an entire year and then ultimately graduated. But overall, 3 states, Ohio, Texas, and California, and 8 different households. And that's inclusive of each parent, grandmothers, and sometimes people that I was not even related to. So oftentimes, just hearing that, people will ask, were you in foster care? And I was not, but I call it community care because there were people who took me in when they did not have to do so. There was no court order. They did not receive child support from my family or from, the government. And they took me in, whether they saw something in me and wanted to do their part in ultimately helping. That's what I like to think about and think that that's why they did it. But ultimately, that's what helped me to have stability when my grandmother took me in. Usually it's the maternal grandmother, but it was my paternal grandmother who took me in so that I didn't have to go to foster care. And because I would have been in foster care had the court had its way.
Are you an only child?
I am.
I guess thank God, right?
Well, actually, that's what my aunt says all the time. Through all of this stuff, one thing to be grateful for is that there weren't others with me. It was just me, whether that's good or bad, but that there weren't other children that had to go through some of the things that I endured.
Well, with all the instability, what do you think kept you motivated as you were coming up from that 4-year-old kid and to actually succeed and to do something with your life?
I had an editor who wanted to read some excerpts from the book, and he read about my teenage years. And when he first met me in person, he said, you went from JD to JD. And I looked puzzled because I had no idea what he was talking about. But he said, you were a juvenile delinquent of sorts, and you went on to earn your Juris Doctorate. And I bring that up because I know that people were praying for me when I didn't know to pray for myself, whether it was my grandmothers or others in the family, because for sure I had a foundation of a relationship with God, but we all veer off, and I definitely veered off, and I do attribute it all to people who were praying for me.
Wow.
That's amazing.
So so your mom had mental illness, and what about your dad? Where was he in the picture?
Well, our family was broken. They tried to live together when we lived in California. So once they separated, a lot of my going back and forth on those airplane rides was between my parents until they had their own demons, their own issues that they began to fall victim of, and I started living with other people. So with my dad, he's still in California. My mother is in Canton. And she was diagnosed with manic depression, schizophrenia when I was about 13 years old. And from that time, she ended up moving back to Ohio and left me in Texas. And I wanted to stay at that school so I could try to finish out the school year. But ultimately, the school did not allow me to stay because I did not live with legal guardians. So that's what led me back to Ohio. And unfortunately—
How old were you then?
I was 15.
Okay.
And at that time, I had to make the biggest decision of my life, which was where was I going to live? Because everyone was asking me, well, where do you want to go? And I knew I couldn't go back to California because of the first JD in my life, all the things that I was involved in, trying to sell drugs, drinking underage, taking cars. And even when the police were called on me, that did not deter me from the behaviors that I exhibited. The thing that got me was when I was suspended from school. My friends and I, unfortunately, used to jump other girls. And I talk about this because a lot of young ladies engage in that type of behavior now, and just understanding what you're doing right now and how it can impact your future.
For a donation of $150 or more, TCT is proud to offer you this brand new study Bible personally signed by Julie and Friends. The Study Bible for Women, together with the Old and New Testament volumes of the Women's Evangelical Commentary, completes a trilogy of unique tools for unlocking the riches of Holy Scripture. Throughout this treasured Bible, you will find tips and tools that will equip every woman on how to stand firm in their faith. 1 Peter 3:15 calls us to always be ready to give a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. This study tool is rich with other features like full-color maps, character profiles, answers to hard questions, and more. We want you to have this lifelong family keepsake in your home today. Simply write to Julie and Friends, P.O. Box 308, Heron, Illinois, 62948. Or call 866-338-5033. That's 866-338-5033.
So while the police, which seems to be more serious of a situation, did not deter my behavior, me getting suspended from school did deter that behavior, and it helped me to change who I wanted to be and what I wanted to ultimately be, and then move forward in my life. And that was like in the 8th grade.
Why was being suspended from school so significant?
You know what? It is so trivial as I think back on it, but it was because it was at the end of the school year. We couldn't go to school for the last 2 or 3 days of school where all of those end of the year activities happen. People sign your yearbooks. That's my mindset. I wanted to go and see my friends at the end of the school year. And so just having that as a punishment reached me versus when I was encountered by the police where I could have gone to juvenile detention. That's what my stepmother wanted, but he didn't take me. And I do believe it was like a level of reverse psychology because I was so hard just in my behavior and my attitude where I didn't care if he took me to juvenile hall. And it was almost giving me more credibility if he did take me to juvenile hall, but he didn't. And I believe he did that because it would have changed who I was at that time to be worse. And for him not to take me, help me to navigate through the things I was going through, ultimately to get suspended, and that be the thing that reached me and helped me to want to change who I was becoming.
So what did change look like for you?
Change looked like my appearance. Like I used to dress, let's just say, you know, giant tennis shoes, jeans, hoodies. My friends and I, we had this, our phrase was the posse. That was the name of our group. And we wore that pretty much every day, or lumberjack flannel shirts, color coordinated, of course. To this young lady, I just admired her so, the way she wore her hair, the way she dressed, and I wanted to look more like her. And that's what I started doing, like in the 9th grade. I started being more like this young lady, and I emulated her. And
so what did your friends do when you made that switch?
actually, the big change was that I no longer was around those friends. I went to my guidance counselor, and he helped me, again, to write an essay so that I could go to another school, because we were in junior high. And going on to high school, I knew if I went to the high school that I was assigned based on my neighborhood, I would be in more fights than school assemblies.
Wow.
And that was a major thought for me and a decision to go to my counselor to help me to get into this other high school so that I had a better opportunity to change and to be in a different environment.
And to know to do that
Yes.
was wonderful.
That's amazing.
Isn't that amazing?
So,
Somebody was praying for me, because I don't, you know, I was like 14, 15 years old. I don't know how I thought to do that.
I'm just thinking, because you're going to be a judge one of these days.
Thank you.
And you will be a judge. Yeah. And your experiences, though, will help you in understanding people that are going to be in front of you.
Yes. And actually, my first job as a lawyer, I was a juvenile prosecutor, and that really woke me up. I'm like, this could have been me. The things that you know, that children were charged with, they were things that I did. I just did not get arrested for it or go to juvenile detention hall for it. But that really woke me up, to see children in shackles, charged with crimes, felony level crimes. It's something that is really upsetting, but at the same time, it can be a breakthrough for an individual if they get touched like I did in regards to getting suspended. There's some event that helps to trigger to make you want to have a change in your life.
Wow.
Well, what led you to want to become a lawyer?
Well, there are 3 key things. One, my mother attacked me when I was about 16 years old, and that's what led to the not the criminal system, but the domestic court. And that morning when we were scheduled to go to court, I was just excited to go. Like, I wanted to know what the courtroom was about, who was that person in the black robe, who were the people in the suits, what do they do? And when we went there, they never called us into the courtroom. My life was determined without me or my family in the courtroom. The caseworker just came out and said, they're going to let you live with your grandmother. So that triggered my interest in the legal system, and it triggered my interest in what happens in a court.
Wow.
And then in high school, I had ultimately was assigned to the Canton Municipal Court through a job and training partnership program, and that gave me the opportunity to see what the person in the black robe does, the people in the suits, what they do, and to understand the inner workings of the court system. And then ultimately there was an encounter I had with the police, unfortunately, where I was coming out of a parking lot. Ultimately, they said that my music was too loud, and I didn't like the way they talked to me. The one police officer was nice, but the second police officer was not nice. And I'm just like, I want to know my rights. I'm going to go to law school. I'm going to learn my rights. And I'm coming back and tell everybody else what their rights are.
Oh, my God.
That ultimately led me to just knowing for sure I wanted to be a lawyer.
Just one bad police officer.
Just the way, there's a way that you can talk to someone and they get the point, but I just felt the way he talked to me was unnecessary. Yeah, it was very, very much unnecessary.
It is so amazing to me how God put little things that maybe somebody may not have meant anything to anybody else to actually drive the course of their lives. But those little things that led you to...
They might not have meant something to somebody, but it meant something inside of you that triggered that destiny to come forward.
I don't know that I've ever talked to somebody whose life was like so ordered by God. I mean, all our lives are. But it's so apparent in your life. It's so clear. And it's just amazing.
It is amazing.
So, what was it like having a mentally ill mother? Like, how was that as a kid?
Well, even as an adult, it is a roller coaster ride, quite honestly. And what I've learned is to know that I, along with my family, cannot do it by ourselves. We work with community resources, and that's what I encourage other people to do, to work with community resources because they're readily available. Unfortunately, funding is not always readily available, and that's something that I advocate for, specifically for mental health, not necessarily lumped in with the drug and alcohol, which is another topic. But with my mother, her symptoms became more and more apparent during my teenage years. So it was around 13, 14 years old, where she just would not stop talking. I could not get her to stop talking, so I called my cousin to come over. She still would not stop talking, and we took her to the emergency room. And there is when she was first diagnosed with manic depression, schizophrenia. And after that, she left me in Texas. We were staying with my friend from church, our friends from church, until she was able to get a 2-bedroom because I had decided and agreed with her that I would stay in Texas with her. And we moved in with friends until we can get another apartment with a 2-bedroom. And one day before school, she was trying to talk to me, and I was trying to get ready for school. She worked at my school, and I didn't see her at work. And then when I came home, she wasn't there. So back then, there was a late-night TV program called Arsenio Hall. So that was around 11 o'clock, right? That's late. And she still wasn't at the house. And the phone rang, and it was my mom. And I'm like, well, when are you coming home? She said she was on her way home. I was like, when will you be here? I'm not on my way there. I'm on my way to Canton. And I just remember dropping the phone and just crying. And my friend's mom, took over the conversation to find out. And that was a significant thing for me because I always had guilt about it. I felt like if I would have just talked to her more that morning, she wouldn't have left. But that was a significant sign of her mental illness taking over.
For a donation of $150 or more, TCT is proud to offer you this brand new study Bible personally signed by Julie and Friends. The Study Bible for Women, together with the Old and New Testament volumes of the Women's Evangelical Commentary, completes a trilogy of unique tools for unlocking the riches of Holy Scripture. Throughout this treasured Bible, you will find tips and tools that will equip every woman on how to stand firm in their faith. 1 Peter 3:15 calls us to always be ready to give a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. This study tool is rich with other features like full-color maps, character profiles, answers to hard questions, and more. We want you to have this lifelong family keepsake in your home today. Simply write to Julie and Friends, P.O. Box 308, Herrin, Illinois, 62948. or call 866-338-5033. That's 866-338-5033.
Wow.
Wow.
So what's it look like now, today, dealing with her?
Well, right now it's sporadic, and I have created boundaries and understand the importance of having boundaries. So when I'm not able to directly help her, i.e. when she is psychotic and that is targeted towards me or put towards me, I have to protect myself, right? So, and there have been situations where I've had to call the police, but again, knowing the resources that are available, but still wanting to be there for your family member. Unfortunately, a lot of people have a misconception that the family isn't there to help, and I am here to say that that is not true. Many times you have to protect yourself, but you help from a distance by using the resources that are available in the community. There was a basketball player, NBA player, used to play for the Cavaliers, Delonte West, and there have been recent pictures of him on Twitter and people wondering whether he was homeless and on drugs, but he does suffer from mental illness. And I was so pleased when his cousin spoke out, because the cousin spoke on behalf of Delonte, but also the family, like we are trying to help, right? But there's only so much you can do because the person has rights. And if they don't want the help, they don't have to get the help. If they don't want the medication, they don't have to take the medication. And there's only so much that the legal system can do or the mental health industry can do, and ultimately what the family can do. So you navigate through this whole system trying to work with the resources that are available, and also having different legal options that are available, such as the Guardian program, which ultimately my family and I have done. And so we've been participating with that program for like the last 2 years. It's still difficult, it's still challenging, but there are resources, and we just try to maintain and manage each issue as it happens.
Wow.
Well, for families who are dealing with that, with a loved one, you just mentioned the one resource, the guardianship program. Can you speak to what steps they can take to get involved and to find resources for seeking the proper help?
My number one go-to is NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. It's a national program, but there's chapters in different cities across the U.S. And we're lucky in Stark County to have a chapter of NAMI, as well as this area having a chapter of NAMI. But it provides funding and courses. Like, for example, I went through a 12-week course for families and friends that have a loved one living with mental illness. And it just helps you to understand the illness, how it can impact the relationships, whether it's between a mother and child or husband and wife. There's just different situations, and people are ultimately impacted in similar ways, in trying to get their loved one help, and there's only so much that can be done. Even when you call the police for help, there's only so much that can be done. But I appreciate those police departments that have specialized training in helping individuals with mental health issues, so that they're not automatically taken to jail, but taken to a hospital where they can be assessed and determine whether they need to go for additional mental health services versus jail.
Wow.
Wow.
I was thinking about a couple of things, like what your passions are. I mean, we've talked a lot about law and your passions for those and the families in this situation. What are some of the passions that are in your heart, like the dreams that you have right now, is something you're imparting to others in your life?
My number one are children, and children who experienced far worse than I did, but just knowing that they can still excel in their lives. Many times children aren't able to see outside of their household or their neighborhood to know that they can do more than what they see around them. There are times where I didn't know whether I was going to have something to eat, or I did not have something to eat, and I now know that there's a word for that or a phrase for that. It's food scarcity. And just encouraging school systems, like when I was on the school board, and now, our federal government having a budget for schools to have food available for students. That is like so important, because many times children are not eating unless they're at school. When they go home, there's no food. Over the weekend, there's no food. So some schools are able to provide like meals that children can take home so that they can eat over the weekend. But those simple things, or having school supplies and you're being disciplined for it, punishment, detention because you don't have a pencil. Well, my family can't afford those things. So having organizations that are available that provide and help children with those things, the resources that they need to excel, those are the things that I'm passionate about.
Wow.
It's beautiful. Isn't that awesome?
We, I know in Buffalo, I'm from Buffalo, and we're networking all sorts of different organizations like that through our organization, United Women Rise. And what's amazing to me is there really are resources just about everywhere. Sometimes it's just being able to know what they are and what you're looking for and how to pull it together. We have many pastors and those in career helps programs. Sometimes they're part of charities, nonprofit organizations, whatever, that they all need one another. And that's one of the things that one of my passions is to network those different groups together so that you can holistically provide for the life of a child or for a family that is in need. It is so awesome. What is the role that your faith plays in all of this?
Oh, well, my book, I have like 5 principles that I share with individuals, and the first one is faith. Wow. So again, while both of my parents had their trials and tribulations, they both imparted in me the importance of a relationship with God and going to church. So while my father did not go to church, he made us go. So if we didn't go to church, we couldn't go anywhere else, you know, that day. And that stuck with me as an adult. If I didn't go to church, I wouldn't like go to the store or anything. I'm like, I didn't go to church today. But it is important to have a relationship, and I stress that because you have the religion aspect, the denominations and things of that nature, but having a relationship where you know and understand your connection to God, your ability to go to Him for yourself. Like earlier I said, there were people praying for me when I didn't know to pray for myself. I know the relationship that I have and able to tap into that at any time throughout the day. Not just, you know, formed prayers at the end of the night on the side of the bed, but all throughout the day, relying on God to get me through.
Beautiful.
It's amazing.
She's amazing.
Now, what about we have like 2 minutes left, but what about your sons? Let's talk about
my
them.
sons are awesome. I have 2 sons, Jalen and Jordan. Jalen is 24, a college student, and as I said, started 2 organizations, Student Immigrant Alliance, as well as the Black Student Union on Kent Stark's campus. And my youngest son is 17. He's a junior in high school, and looking forward to him doing great things.
Wow. I don't think
they
have it in their genes.
they're already forming organizations.
I know, we're talking double portion here. What are they going to do? They're going to be president.
Well, I'm glad that I do inspire individuals, but I know that I'm like extra in regards to just I just want to do so much while I'm here on this earth as much as I can. So I in no way pressure my children to do, but encourage them in whatever their passions are to follow that and to pursue what makes them happy.
Yeah, I think it's so important. If we teach them nothing else, is that there really isn't any limits.
Right.
You know, there's no ceiling over our children, even though society wants to put it on for whatever reason, or other people do, but there really isn't any limits, and you're demonstrating that. You're not just saying it, you're demonstrating it. It's so powerful. Wow.
And your website is
CoreyEmpowers.com.
That's awesome. And hashtag driven. You've got to get this book. Oh my gosh, it's amazing.
Thank you.
So, and I bet we haven't even touched the surface of everything.
I know. I still got a boatload of questions.
Well, you'll have to come back. This has been awesome.
I would love to come back.
So, all right. Well, thank you so much. We can't wait till you're a judge and see what happens there. And you were on the school board. You were
City council.
City council. Like it never ends, right?
Yep.
Anyway, thank you for joining us. I know. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.